Judge Engoron gags Trump's lawyers. He doesn't like their comments about Greenfield, this woman right here. Allison, you see the judge has a little bit of a sparkle in the eye looking at her. Hey, what's up, law clerk? I love the way you're handling those papers, man. Staple those papers. I love that stamp. Hit it, Allison. And so the judge doesn't want people talking about his Greenfield because he's got something going on or something. I don't know. But it is an order that was written from him telling the defense team, stop commenting about her. Now, I know I'm joking about it, but I think it is a serious issue. If the judge is getting direction from the law clerk, who is the judge? Okay, who's actually conducting the proceedings? And if the judge is getting notes and getting whispers and looking to her for guidance and looking for responses to objections, we can't see what's in the courtroom. They don't have cameras in there. They tell us that this is all open and transparent, but then suddenly we can't actually see what's happening. They do bring the cameras in for about 2 minutes before the proceedings start, and then they kick us all out so that the judge and his clerk can apparently collude with one another. Here is what it looks like inside the court. Eric Trump going to be testifying, we'll get to. Alina Habba dressed in hot pink, so they will let cameras in there from time to time. But as soon as the proceedings come into play, everybody's got to be thrown out. Now let's see if they pan on over to Tish James, and we're going to see where Tishy's sitting today, where she planted that Tishy, whether it's in front of the bar or behind the bar. Everybody's getting their camera shots in.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Did we have a Tish sighting? Oh, there's the judge. Oh, look at Judges Greenfield sitting right next to him. And she's got a little bit of a smirk on her eyes going there. The judge is not happy about it either. I wonder if they had a conversation this morning. The judge looks fired up. He's coming out to defend her honor. Don't you talk about Allison that way? All right, let's see if Tish is here. Where's Tish? Oh, there she is. Oh, there's Tish sitting again, once again, in the back of the courtroom behind the bar. I don't know why she's doing that. She's a lawyer, man. She's the state attorney general. What's she doing over there? And look at her. She's staring at Eric Trump. Oh my gosh, what a psychopath. Staring, smiling, giggling, using her raw power of the office of the New York Attorney General to go after her political opponents. And so that's what's happening in New York. Now, there was a big fiery explosion this morning when Judge Engoron said to Trump's defense, don't you dare talk about my girlfriend, okay? She's my Greenfield is what I meant to say, Greenfield. Don't talk about my Greenfield. And it is written in an order, and we're going to read through the order because now Trump's attorneys can't even see it. And so we'll get there right after a quick message from our friends. You probably saw this story about Chicago BLM supporting the attack on Israel with a very provocative X post. The title, Fury, as Black Lives Matter group posts image of paratrooper and says it stands with Palestine. A lot of people on the right were talking about this story, obviously, but on the left, total silence. When we look at the story over on Ground News, the sponsor of this video, we can see that there are currently more than 20 stories published about this, and over 90% of them were from the right. That makes sense. The right is indulging in the left's hypocrisy while the left is trying to ignore it. We can also see every article published on this topic in one place and compare each headline to see how the media is framing the story. What's nice about the Ground News app and their website is that it aggregates all the news sources from local and international sources on any given story, and it shows us who is saying what, and it even provides background information on the news sources themselves, like who owns them, and it gives us their factuality rating and their political leanings as well. But what I love most about Ground News is their blind spot feature, and maybe even more importantly, shows the stories that the right might be missing or even hiding themselves, stuff that we don't want to ignore and that we need to cover here. We have our opinions on this channel, of course, but we try to make sure that we know what the other side is doing because that's how we make our arguments stronger. Ground News helps with exactly that, which is why I think what they're doing is more important than ever. So check it out for yourself. Go to ground.news/RGE. I really believe what they're doing is important, so check it out. The link is down in the description below. The order from Judge Engoron is right here, and let's unpack it. Judge is not happy. Some people were talking about his Greenfield. He's like, hey, that's my Greenfield. And here, this came out in an order. They said, The judge. All right, everybody. I'm angry with you. On October 3rd, after Trump posted to social media account untrue, disparaging, and personally identifying information about my principal Law Greenfield, I imposed on all parties to this action a very limited gag order, forbidding all parties from posting, emailing, or speaking publicly about any members of my staff, emphasizing quite clearly that personal attacks on members of my court staff are unacceptable, inappropriate, and I will not tolerate them under any circumstances. Which is strange because we have free speech and we can't, I think, talk about people who are involved in the process, who are part of the political prosecution of people if they are actively engaged in it. Why can we not talk about that? Now, I've made further clear that failure to abide by this directive will result in serious sanctions, says the judge. On October 20th, upon learning that Trump failed to remove a post from one of his campaign websites, Donald Trump, for a total of 17 days, I imposed a fine of $5,000 against Donald Trump for violating the gag order. On October 25th, 2023, after conducting a brief hearing, I concluded that Trump intentionally violated my gag order by telling a gaggle of reporters outside the courtroom the following statement in reference to my principal Greenfield, my number one GF. Says this judge is a very partisan judge with a person who's very partisan sitting alongside him. Trump said he was talking about Cohen. Perhaps even more partisan than he is. And so then the judge said, that's my Greenfield. And then fined him an additional $10,000 on that. So the judge writes, look, I impose the gag order only upon the parties operating under the assumption that such a gag order would be unnecessary upon the attorneys, right? So only like, Trump. Because the attorneys are officers of the court. But over the past week, defendants' principal attorneys, namely Christopher Case and Clifford Robert and Alina, Habba, they have made on record repeated inappropriate remarks about my principal Greenfield, falsely accusing her of bias against them and of improperly influencing the ongoing bench trial. Wouldn't it be nice if we could see the video and comment on this and judge for ourselves? Because it certainly sounds like something weird is going on. They say Trump's lawyers have made long speeches alleging that it is improper for a judge to consult with a law clerk during ongoing proceedings, and that the passing of notes from a judge to a law clerk and vice versa constitutes an improper appearance of impropriety in the case. But these arguments have no basis. If I want to take notes from my Greenfield in the afternoon and play footsie, I'm allowed to do that. And you can't criticize anything, right? I could have her maybe just sit on my lap and just type up the memos. Now, pursuant to the New York rules, the judge is citing his own rules just to make sure, says a judge may consult with court personnel whose function is to aid the judge in the carrying out of the adjudicative responsibilities of the judges. Okay, does it say like what, every 5 minutes that you can just get notes? Because if the law clerk is acting as the actual judge or is taking over a substantial portion of the judge's duties, is that actually the judge or is that the law clerk doing the adjudicating? Like when you go to a surgeon, do they like open you up and then like pass it off to somebody? What do you think? Should I cut that or cut that? I don't know. Let me ask my clerk. Hang on a second here. What are you doing over there? What do you think I should cut? No, thanks for your input. Well, I'll call you back in 2 seconds when I got to stitch him back up. It's nuts. It's like you're the judge, right? You don't need outside influence for somebody who knows more than you do or knows what the plan is. So you can criticize that, in my opinion. Now, again, there's already laws, okay? You can't harass or threaten somebody. You can't say, go take this woman's house or something, right? That's all illegal already. Trump has not done any of that. But fair criticism about the court process is legitimate. He says this is precisely the role of my principal Greenfield in New York courts. Moreover, ethics advisory opinions, this judge is like coping now. He's like, I can do whatever I want. He's like justifying it. He's over-explaining a little bit. The relationship between a judge and his or her Greenfield is one of particular trust and confidence. Ooh, this judge. Look what he's citing. Oh, he's going to tell us about the romance here. The relationship, by the way, America, in case you didn't know. Let me tell you about Engoran and Greenfield's relationship. Here it is. He writes, the relationship between a judge and his law clerk is one of particular trust and confidence. Although a judge and his law clerk are, of course, not partners, sure, the two do engage in the kind of professional interchange. Oh, is that what they call it in New York City court clerk biz language? Professional interchange that might be found between longtime colleagues in a law firm. Well, I don't know what kind of law firm they were working at. Whoa, the judge has a professional interchange exchange with his law clerk, and don't you talk about it. The judge he's fired up. He got busted. He knows it. He says, as I have stated on the record, seemingly to no avail, my Greenfield is a public servant who are performing their jobs in the manner in which I request. This includes providing legal authority and opinions, as well as responding to questions as I pose them, very frequently, very regularly. So plainly, Trump's lawyers are not entitled to the confidential communications amongst me and my court staff, who are hired specifically to aid me in carrying out my adjudicative responsibilities. Nor are they entitled to continue referencing my staff in the record. So the defense can't even talk about her in the record. They're not entitled to communicate about how the court is proceeding, saying Trump's lawyers have had ample opportunity to make their record, and they've made it. They've already said that they don't like this. So indeed, I will assist them by repeating here that I will continue to consult my staff, as is my unfettered right, as much as I want, as much time as I want. Maybe they're texting each other in a Slack group or something, who knows? Throughout the remainder of the trial, I'll be doing what I want. And so Trump's record, yours, is fully preserved for the duration of the proceedings. I took your complaints, they're filed. And so the attorneys may refer back to this blanket statement in their appeals as they deem appropriate. I don't care. Says Trump may reference my staff as is appropriate to ask about scheduling issues and to manage the trial, which is part of their jobs. But what Trump may not do is to make any further statements about internal and confidential communications, whether it's conversations, note passing, or anything similar between me and my staff. What kind of world are we living in? The judge says, you can't comment on my secret notes with my court clerk. Man, he is really irritated by this. Why is that? Because he knows that he's busted and he doesn't know what the heck he's doing. He says defendants' First Amendment arguments in opposition to this imposition are wholly unpersuasive. This gag order is as narrowly tailored as possible to accomplish its goal, which is what? To protect the note-taking capacity of you? Did he say she's under threat now? She's not even under attack, under any threat. Is anybody harassing her? Is there any imminent harm coming her way? It's just, he doesn't want them commenting about notes being passed. Okay. So this gag order is narrowly tailored as possible. Now, as I have made clear, as the judge in this case and the trier of fact, the gag order does not apply to me. So say whatever you want about me. However, I will not tolerate under any circumstances remarks about my Greenfield. The threat of an actual violence resulting from heated political rhetoric is well documented. All right. So that means we can't say anything and criticize your Greenfield. Since the commencement of this bench trial, my chambers have been inundated with hundreds of harassing and threatening phone calls and voicemails and emails and letters and packages. Well, you probably should see if they came from the FBI. Now, the First Amendment right of defendants and their attorneys to comment on my staff is far and away outweighed by the need, by the need to protect them from threats and physical harm. Did you see what he just wrote in a court order? The First Amendment right of the defense and their lawyers to comment on my staff, which is the proceeding, is outweighed by the need to protect him by the physical harm. Okay? Just so we're clear. Judge Engoran's Greenfield in his courtroom and the note-taking is so appropriate and permissible because they have professional interchanges there. Very, complicated, very special relationship that none of us would understand. And if you dare to criticize that component of what's happening, they might be under threat of physical harm, and so you're silenced. You can't criticize what appears to be totally inappropriate note-taking. He even admits it. It's like, we're passing notes this whole time. If he's the judge, then why is he getting instructions from his law clerk? Maybe she should just be the judge. So for the reasons stated herein, he's gagging the lawyers. I hereby order that all lawyers are prohibited from making any public statements in or out of court that refer to any confidential communications in any form between me and my staff. Don't you tell on my note-taking. Don't you dare report that I am getting advice from my court clerk. Failure to abide by this directive shall result in serious sanctions. It's a wild time. I mean, it's like, where is this going? So the lawyers can't comment about the process, and I'm hopeful that they appeal this immediately because the lawyers should be fired up. Every lawyer should be fired up. You can't comment on what a judge is doing when the judge is doing something that is grossly inappropriate. Well, that's what this judge did. And so we're going to get into the trial activities. Now, that is the final order. But today, there was a lot of action on the stand. And we're going to start with Eric Trump. He was on the stand, and the trial activities come over from Dan Alexander. He was back in Lower Manhattan. Now, he's going to walk us through some of this. He says that Eric Trump was in court, strolls into the courtroom wearing a dark suit and tie, stands at the defense table, hands in his pocket. Tish is there, seated in her usual front row spot. She's got the cushion just how she likes it. Been sitting there for a lot in this trial, not standing or doing anything, just sitting. When the judge arrives in about 5 minutes, they'll get started. Judge walks in. All right. rise. Oh, man, stand up. All right, please be seated. Judge scurries on up to his perch, as he usually does. He says, you know, as the day goes on, I go slower and slower. It's Friday. Now, photographers bust in, smaller group here, 4 of them, 4 cameras. One of them has shades on. They position themselves in front of Eric. They're snapping away. They make their way out. Photographer takes his photo of Tish, and she's like smiling like a lunatic. Now, they've been here for 15 minutes, and things are already going off the rails. The judge says he hopes he was clear yesterday. He says, all right, everybody, listen. My Greenfield and I have a special relationship. I just want to be crystal clear about this on the record. I thought I was clear yesterday, but I instructed the defense lawyers to stop making a big deal out of my clerk. If she wants to pass me love notes in the middle of a trial, she's free to do that. He says, I'm worried about this. Chris Keyes, Trump's lawyer, stands up and says, Your Honor, I know you've said something like this, but I got to tell you, this is ridiculous. I've been practicing law for however many years. This is a case of national importance. You're the judge who's been assigned to this case, not your law clerk. It's very clear based on my research, the law clerk is biased, and the entire country, Your Honor, if not the world, is watching this proceeding. He says, I can't even believe what we're seeing here. You're the judge, and this is all hands. By the way, we, the defense, should even be seeking a mistrial. That's what he says is so bad. Judge Engoran is sitting there. He says, nice talk. Not very impressed. Okay, you say you need to make a record? Well, you've already said all of this. I've heard this like 10 times. Okay, I still like my love notes. And he says, well, I'll think about it and blah, blah, blah. So of course we get a ruling, and now we jump over to Forbes, where the testimony continues, courtesy of Dan Alexander. Now we're there. He says the proceedings are finally back to business. The attorney general and one of their lawyers, not Tish, because she doesn't do anything, says, all right, Your Honor, we're recalling Eric Trump to the stand. He says, all right, walks up there. Seems like he's a little tense, they say. Looks like deja vu in the courtroom. Eric Trump says, look, I don't know anything about the calculations of the net worth, all right? I don't know. It's the same story that we had yesterday. Document after document, Eric Trump is sort of involved, sending emails in calculations. The Attorney General office now has a series of documents. They put them on the screen. They say, do you think this would present a fair picture of your father's finances? They say your signature's on there. Do you think it's fair? He said, well, I wouldn't sign something that I didn't think was not accurate. They continue questioning. They say, Eric, now tell me how we came to these calculations. He says, you know, I don't really remember. We were reviewing methodologies on how we calculated the net worth, but they say, how did you come to the determination about whether these documents were accurate or not? He says, well, I had lawyers and accountants, so I gave it to them. The lawyers and the accountants told me it was accurate or not. I wouldn't sign something that didn't feel accurate, says Eric Trump. Then they put up some other documents on the screen. Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Trump lives there. AG's office put some spreadsheets up there. And they say, do you know here? They say, here's one valuation. When Mar-a-Lago was considered a club versus when Mar-a-Lago was considered a home, right? If it's a public property, might be differently valued than a private home. Would be worth more as a private residence than a club. So now this is a big thorny issue. Of all the assets, Mar-a-Lago is the hardest one to evaluate and value. There's development restrictions on that. Eric Trump says, well, I think it probably could be converted to a residence at some point. He says, my father said it's probably worth 1.5 bill. He says that number is pretty inflated. AG's office said it's probably closer to 75 mil, which also seems low. Forbes has evaluated it at a different rate also. So Eric Trump is now done. Comes down from the stand, grabs his lapel, walks to the center of the room, storms out or strolls out of the side doors. Cameras erupt. And that's it on the day. The judge returns to the issue about his law clerk. He's still fired up. He's like, we've got dinner tonight and she's going to be so mad at me. He says, going forward, I don't want any other comments about my staff or how I communicate with them. Don't tell everybody about our notes. Now that's it for the day. Over from Dan Alexander. But we also got, we're going to fill in some of gaps here with Adam Klasfeld, who's also reporting. And so we'll restart with saying that Eric Trump is back. The judge is in session. People are there taking photos. Engoron addresses the comments that they've never seen a judge pass as many notes with his clerk. Engoron says, well, that's not true. I know about another judge who presided over a high-profile case where a clerk was running for an election, and the clerk told me that I sit on the bench every day with the judge. I whisper in his ear and tell him how he rules. So the judge is telling a story like that? He says, but that's not this case. She's not whispering in my ear. Engoron says, I hope I made myself clear yesterday. Now, Chris is unbowed. He says, fired up. He says, Your Honor, I don't know how to make a record here about our complaints. He says, do you feel the need to make further record as things stand now? He says, yeah, I think I do. Engoron says, but I don't want to endanger the safety of my staff. And he says, you can say whatever you want about me, but not my staff. Keith launches into an extensive monologue. The world's watching this case. He says, Your Honor, I have read an article, by the way, about Greenfield's campaign contributions. He says, if that is substantiated, I think the defense is going to have to make a serious consideration on seeking a mistrial. If your clerk is whispering into your ear and she making campaign contributions to other people that are adverse to us, that's bias, and we're going to move for a mistrial. trial. Says, I think we all need to take this very seriously because the entire world is watching. He says, there are two adversaries here for a third time. Engoron says, you've said all that. AG comes in, says, Your Honor, the notion that bias can be assessed by the number of notes passed between a clerk and a judge and the number of notes passed by which side, I've never heard of that. So it sounds like even the government is admitting, like, wow, they're sending a lot of notes over there. But whether it's like 10 notes per hour or 50 notes per hour, it's not a good indicator of bias, is what the government says. It says no party has a right to be privy to the internal deliberations of the chambers. That's absolutely clear. And so that includes knowing how many notes are being passed. The government is saying you can't know what they're doing. Like, you can't even count them. It says we're wasting a lot of time here with speeches. If they really have a problem, put it in papers. And the judge says, gosh, it's a shame that we descended to this level. He says, I agree. The world is watching. And Eric Trump is brought back in and his testimony starts. They talk about Deutsche Bank, and we got most of the rest of that here. Back to testimony. Eric Trump is being shown a bunch of documents. Now, Engoron, before the morning recess, sparks fly between Engoron and Keese. Engoron warns him, hey, no more remarks about my clerk, even to create a record. If you want to appeal or move to recuse, you've got plenty of ammunition. He says, by the way, the record that you want to make would be useless anyway because the judge has the absolute right to receive notes from my staff. And if you want to make a motion at this point, go ahead and do it. You've made speeches, Chris. You've made observations. What more of a record do you want? He brings out two adversaries a fourth time. He says, and the judge is just scoffing at him. The government turns in. They say, Your Honor, this is a sideshow. This sideshow of the clerk passing notes to the judge, it's being designed to interrupt our ability to put an end to this. And if there's something improper between a judge and a clerk passing notes, you make your motion now, he says to Keese. Engoron says, I'm going to issue a written ruling later today. And now Andrew talks about establishing a record. So the government says, Your Honor, I'd like to make a record. And Keese says, oh, wow, a record? There needs to be a record? That's interesting. Chris Keese has freaking had it, man. Blowing a gasket. Rightfully so. I'd probably be doing the same. Proceedings have ended for the day. Eric Trump's testimony unceremoniously wrapped up. No cross-examination. Finished the questioning about the severance. And that was it. Now, Eric Trump did make a statement when he was exiting the courtroom, as did Alina Habba. And so let's listen to what Eric Trump had to say upon the exit.
Please try to do my father. It's really awful. I've never seen anything like it. We have an unbelievable company. It's the best asset in the world. We've never had default. We've never missed a loan payment. We have thousands of employees, thousands of employees that rely on our company every single day to put food in their mouths. In the state of New York, we run some of the most significant buildings, some of the best golf courses, so many other great properties. And the witch hunt that this woman is under, the witch hunt that this person is under, to get my father for political purposes, is disgusting. They dragged Don and I and mocked into it as a collateral damage. They only want our names in this thing because it sensationalizes their case. We've done absolutely nothing wrong. We have a better company than they could have ever imagined. And this is a big charade that's a huge waste of taxpayer money.
Big charade and a huge waste of taxpayer money. And of course, he's right about that. It's also a disgusting abuse of governmental power. I understand the idea that this is a waste of taxpayer money. That's fine. Taxpayer money is wasted all the time. This is a full-blown attack on free speech. It's a weaponized government against a person's private businesses and public businesses. It is the weaponization of power against political opponents. That's what is outrageous. Here's Alina Habba, who's coming out to explain the same.
We are now over a month deep into the biggest waste of New York taxpayer dollars I've ever seen. President Trump's statement of financial condition was so undervalued. But Letitia James, as you've seen, will show up when it's a press day. I said it yesterday on the news. She hasn't been here for days, but you know when she's going to come? When the main event's here, and that is Trump. She piggybacked on Trump to get into office. She didn't do it well enough to be a governor. She was a failed gubernatorial candidate. And now she's working on her politics again. She shows up, sits in the back when she should be doing real work because the city of New York has fallen apart. If you are a business in New York, pay attention. You put your value. If President Trump wanted to inflate his net worth on a statement of financial condition, his brand alone could double, triple it. It's basic. It's basic. This is a waste of time. We heard testimony from an expert this week. Ms. James wasn't here for that day because it wasn't good for her. He's been paid by New York taxpayer dollars $450,000 in the past few months to come here and testify. That's your money. That's not my money. It is a crime. And now these children are being brought in away from their families for doing nothing wrong. It's a great company. It has always been a great company. It's worth a lot more than the state statements say, and she just doesn't like it. And now her politics don't allow her to back off or back down. And it's unfortunate, but this case should be done. We are wasting our time. Thank you.
It's much more than a waste of time and money. It's a full-blown attack, and this is just one vector. Yes, it's a civil case. Yes, it's Trump's businesses, but it is taking time and resources and money, and Trump and his lawyers could be doing so much other things, like protecting against other legal onslaughts that the Democrats are cobbling together right now. So we'll be here continuing to cover the New York trial and Judge Engoron Greenfield as this trial continues to unfold. I do hope you join us, my friends. Thank you for checking out robertgovea.com to sign up for our daily newsletter so you can get access to all of these PDFs, to the mind map, and get the show notes sent right to your inbox every single day. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you on the next one.